Before I moved to Mexico, I kept hearing the same warning over and over again. I still remember my grandfather telling me, "Be careful, people get killed there." That was the image I had in my head before coming here. But after more than 8 years living in Mexico, I can tell you that image was incomplete. The reality has been far more complex and far more interesting than most people think. I have lived in Quintana Roo since 2018, traveled for different parts of the country, done long road trips across Mexico and built both a life and a business here. So this is not a tourist opinion. It's a real experience of actually living here as a foreigner. Because what I found in Mexico was not what I expect. Some things made me more cautious, some caught me off guard, and some of the reason I never left. One of the first things I realized after living in Mexico is how often people from the outside reduce the whole country to one single history. And that happens all the time, especially in the US. Something negative happens in one city or in one state, and suddenly the conversation becomes about all of Mexico. To me, that's a huge mistake. I've even seen that in my own life. Not long ago, after the incidents in Guadalajara, I had clients, friends and family asking me if everything was okay. But Guadalajara is more than 1,000 miles from where I live. That's how quickly people generalize when it comes to Mexico. But after living here, moving around the country, and seeing how different one place can feel from another, I just don't think Mexico makes sense when you look at it that way. It's far more nuanced than that. And once I understood that, I also started to see something else. What made me more cautious living here was not always what people from the outside tend to imagine. And honestly, a lot of what made me more cautious in Mexico was much more ordinary than that. For me, it often comes from everyday situations. Buying a car in Mexico City that turned out to have problems and even missing legal paperwork, paying someone a deposit to build a wooden closet and only for that person to disappear and never come back. And then there are the smaller situations that also teach you something. Taxi drivers trying to charge you more, or those moments when you feel that because you look like a foreigner, some people assume you will pay more, tip more, or just go along with it. I'm only speaking from my own experience. I'm not trying to generalize, but for me, one of the hardest parts of adjusting to life in Mexico was realizing that being comfortable here also means being a little less naive, asking more questions, checking more things, and not trusting too fast. And that lesson didn't only come from everyday situations like that. There was also one moment that made me realize how easy it is as a foreigner to step into a place without fully understanding what's going on around you. And that moment was in Celestún. It was my first time there, and my partner and I completely fell in love with the place. I still remember that sunset. It was the kind of moment that makes you think this place is something else, beautiful, untouched, and full of that feeling that you have found somewhere special. But the time it got dark, and we were still there. And because we both work in real estate, we started wondering if there might be land for sale nearby. So we got in the car and started driving around to explore. But it was already late and it was very dark. And we thought really realize it, we were getting into places we didn't know at all. At one point, we drove past a group of people with motorcycles parked outside. I had my window down, so I said, "Good evening," just trying to be friendly. They answered, but then they asked where we were going. When I told them we were just looking to see if there was any land for sale, I felt immediately that it hadn't gone down well. They told us we couldn't go any further, that it was a restricted area. And right there, I knew something wasn't right. It felt like we were in the wrong place, asking the wrong questions, without understanding the bigger picture. Later on, we found out there were local tensions in Celestún around land, protests, and frustration about foreigners buying in the area. And that moment stayed with me because it made me realize how easy it is as a foreigner to walk into a situation without fully understanding the local reality behind it. That taught me something important. In Mexico, like anywhere else, being safe is not just about being careful. It's also about understanding context, respecting what you don't know yet, and realizing that not every place is simple as it looks from the outside. And yet, even with all of that, that's still not what defines my life in Mexico. Because one of the things that keep me here is how good everyday life can actually feel. And I think that's one of the things people on the outside miss the most. For me, one of the best examples is street food. In Mexico, there is food everywhere and anytime. Morning, afternoon, night. And one of the things I love most is that an incredible experience doesn't need to come with a fancy place or a big meal. Sometimes a $2 taco from a stand on the corner can be better than a meal in a much more expensive place. And to me, that says something bigger about life here. Some of the best parts of living in Mexico are not polished, expensive, or planned. They are simple, spontaneous, and right there in front of you. And that's one of the things that makes life here so enjoyable, and one of the reasons it becomes very hard to live. And for me, a huge part of why Mexico is so hard to live is the lifestyle itself. One of the biggest reasons I'm still here after all these years is that life here feels more connected to the outside, to the climate, to nature. And that changed more than people think. Because in a lot of places, things like going to the beach, swimming in a cenote, diving somewhere incredible, or just spending your weekend surrounded by nature are things you associate with holidays. They are the kind of life you get to borrow for a few days. But here, they don't always have to feel like an escape. They can be just part of your normal life. And for me, that makes a huge difference. Because once your life starts to feel that way, more open, more spontaneous, and more connected to things you actually enjoy, it becomes very hard to replace. So when people ask me, is Mexico safe? My honest answer is this. My experience has been very different from the simple image many people have from the outside. It hasn't been perfect, and it hasn't been the kind of constant fear that some people imagine either. It's been more layered, more complex, and more real than either of those extremes. Living here has made me more aware. It has taught me to pay attention, to respect context, and to stop assuming I understand everything just because a place looks beautiful or feels relaxed. But at the same time, it has given me a life that feels more open, more enjoyable, and more connected to the things I value than ever I expect. So no, I don't think Mexico is something you understand through headlines, stereotypes, or one simple answer. I think you understand it by living it. And after more than 8 years here, that's exactly why I'm still here.